Shalom. What follows may seem a bit strange to some watching, listening, or reading this. However, those who have checked out my profile for Shmu's views are already aware that I am not adverse to investigating all aspects of biblical and Jewish history as it pertains to the contents of the Torah, the Tanakh, Talmud, and related Jewish writings. With that in mind, let's jump into the pool and take a swim into the what if. For those willing to peer beyond a mere surface study of the Hebrew Bible, Genesis presents an intriguing, layered account of creation that may suggest something far more complex than a singular, omnipotent deity fashioning the world in 6 days. Rather, a closer examination, rooted in the original Hebrew and cross-referenced with historical and scientific findings, reveals the possibility of multiple gods, catastrophic events, and a narrative of terraforming and colonization. This apparent plurality of the gods, as addressed by the use of the term Elohim versus Hashem in the opening text, winks at the possibility that the Bible isn't really talking about gods or God, but about events that may have taken place in Earth's ancient past through visitation by a terraforming civilization or civilizations, either Earth-based or extraterrestrial. The very first verse of Genesis begins with the word Elohim, a plural noun typically translated as God, but grammatically suggesting gods, depending on the verb form used in the sentence. Later in Genesis 1:26, we find the phrase Na'aseh Adam betzemu kedemu tenu, let us make man in our image after our likeness. The plurality here has long been debated, even here on Shmu's Views, with many traditional Jewish scholars attributing it to either the royal we or the heavenly court of angels. However, an alternative reading aligns with the idea that multiple divine beings were involved in shaping life on Earth, possibly advanced extraterrestrial entities perceived as gods by early gestating humanity. Between Genesis 1:1 and 1:2, we find a prehistoric cataclysm. Genesis 1:1 states, "In the beginning, Elohim created the heavens and the earth." Yet by Genesis 1:2, one verse later, the earth is described as tohu vevohu, formless and void, a chaotic wasteland covered in darkness. If Elohim had just created a pristine world, why would it immediately be in ruin? Some interpretations suggest that an unspecified cataclysm occurred between these two verses. This gap theory aligns with scientific evidence of planetary devastation, possibly from asteroid impacts, widespread volcanic activity, or even an interstellar conflict, as speculative and paleocontact alternative historians propose. The Genesis account, then, could be describing an effort to rehabilitate Earth after such a disaster, a terraforming operation undertaken by the Elohim. There have been at least 5 major cataclysms found in the Tanakh. While modern science identifies several mass extinctions in Earth's past, the Tanakh itself hints to at least 5 major catastrophic events. We have the flood of Noah, as found in Genesis chapter 6 through chapter 9. This was a deluge wiping out nearly all life, an event echoed in multiple ancient civilizations' myths, some older than the biblical account by thousands of years. And number 2 is the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, Genesis chapter 19, possibly the result of an asteroid impact or nuclear-like devastation. The third is the 10 plagues of Egypt, Exodus chapter 7 through 12, a sequence of environmental and biological disasters affecting Egypt, possibly linked to natural catastrophes such as the huge Santorini volcanic eruption that took place about the same time of the Exodus. And 4, the earth swallowing Korah, found in Numbers 16, verses 31 through 33, a sudden geological event akin to an earthquake that consumed entire families. And, of course, the gap theory proposition already discussed. Each of these events suggests that Earth has undergone cycles of destruction and renewal, with divine or otherworldly forces playing a role in the process. Is the Bible talking about terraforming and genetic manipulation? The Genesis account of creation follows a structured, almost scientific progression of terraforming and genetic manipulation of an existing hominid species, possibly Homo erectus. These advanced visitors to Earth used their technological methods to terraform land masses, introducing water diversion technology, then plant life rehabilitation, then animals, and finally genetically manipulating the DNA of early humanity. This sequence within the Torah in Genesis mirrors the logical steps one would take in a terraforming operation. Furthermore, the creation of Adam is described with curious specificity. And Elohim formed the man from the dust of the earth and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, Genesis 2:7. In light of modern science, this could be interpreted as genetic engineering, taking existing life forms, modifying them to produce intelligent beings in the image of the Elohim. Jewish mystical traditions, such as the Kabbalistic Sefer Yetzirah, Book of Formation, speaks of divine letters and numbers being used to shape existence, an almost mathematical or genetic blueprint for creation. Could this reflect an ancient understanding of DNA as the language of life? As Jews, viewing all this from our own ancient Genesis, we have to ask, are these stories myth, metaphor, or some kind of ancestral memory? Traditional or rabbinic Judaism teaches that the Torah is both literal and metaphorical, containing layers of hidden wisdom. While the notion of alien gods transforming Earth is far from mainstream Jewish thought, the idea of otherworldly beings influence humanity is well within the framework of Jewish mysticism and midrashic teachings. Let's consider the Nephilim, as described in Genesis 6:4. These beings are detailed as the offspring of the sons of Elohim and human women. The Midrash suggests these beings were fallen angels or divine entities who intermingled with humans. If we replace angels with advanced beings or extraterrestrials, the story takes on an entirely new dimension and actually seems more feasible than angels having sex with human beings. So then, one conclusion we can draw from this approach is that the Torah, especially the first 12 chapters of Genesis, is a living narrative of cosmic history that leaves us questioning the who and why of creation. The Torah was never meant to be a mere history book. It is a living document, speaks to every generation in ways that can understand. Whether one interprets Genesis as divine revelation, myth, or encoded history, the text remains compellingly open to exploration. Perhaps just as the ancient Israelites sought to understand their world through the language of gods and angels, we today seek answers through science and speculation. Ancient aliens, space travel, genetic engineering, and terraforming, all things we humans are currently actively engaged in as well. The question, however, remains, were the Elohim divine, or were they simply something else, intervening, terraforming, and shaping our reality for reasons yet unknown? Either way, the narrative of Genesis endures. It endures, challenging us to keep asking questions, just as our Jewish tradition demands we do. Well, that's all for today. If you found this compelling, then I would ask you to please like, subscribe, and share with others. I find this whole area of study quite interesting and compelling. So until next time, I want to wish you a hearty, hearty shalom.